What if sharing the thought that life is short and we can create a meaningful impact could inspire your legacy? Welcome this lovely morning to the Design Your Legacy podcast. I have the pleasure to introduce you to Mike Kaeding, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Norhart. Welcome, Mike.
Hey, thanks for having me.
It is my pleasure. So I know that you come from a family business, your second generation, and for kind of an icebreaker, would you like to share a little bit of Norhart and what you're up to?
Yeah, so at Norhart, we design, build, and rent apartments, but we're really focused on reducing the cost of construction. We're already achieving about a 20 to 30% reduction. We believe we can achieve a 50% overall reduction. But imagine what that means. It means someday your rent could be half, your mortgage payment could be half. So that's a long-term dream, is to ultimately solve America's housing affordability crisis.
Yes, and we're going to speak about legacy in a moment and how you got to where you're at today and the kind of the timeline. But for a moment, I just want to chat briefly about your business because you figured out a way, whether it was through a factory line or producing the steel studs or the concrete form or some of the parts pre-manufactured in order to cut costs. And yet, it's one of the industries you mentioned that nobody was really talking about. Like people would innovate with cars and automobiles or airplanes and other technology industries. And yet here was real estate and construction and development that was kind of left almost archaic.
Yeah, in fact, if you look at the past 60 years, manufacturing has improved labor productivity by 760%. Agriculture has improved by 1,500%. But if you look at construction during that same time period, it's done nothing. Well, 10%, it's been flat. So really at its core, we're really just applying the lessons learned from these other industries into the world of construction. And as a result, we're having pretty significant success.
Yes, yes. And I know that also you've leaned into the Toyota model and pulling
Mm.
like the best practices from many companies and you work with two coaches and
Yeah. Yeah. So if you look at the world of construction, typically different parts of the construction are done by different companies. So imagine if a construction company were to produce cars, you'd have a different company installing the windshield, different company installing the door, and a different company installing the wheel. And then the wheel company, well, they would get delayed on another project and you'd be stuck for maybe 2 weeks until they got back out there. And when they did arrive, they'd be irate because they could only work on one car at a time. See, the world of manufacturing looks at us and says, dude, you guys are crazy. But for us, like this is the way we've always have done it. So one of the first things we did was bring all the work under one roof. But once you do that, you can apply some very simple techniques like the assembly line. See, that revolutionized manufacturing, but how in the world could you take a building and apply the assembly line to it? I mean, you can't take a building and move it down a line, but what you can do is you can take the person and move them through the building. So right now, every 5 hours, our teams shift by one unit to the building. We look at the end of our building, we have brand new apartment units produced every 5 hours. And that one technique drives a construction process that might have taken 15 months and drives it down to 9.
yes, and I know again before we get into legacy and kind of your goals and raising capital in a moment, I know that you'd like to have what was it, 60,000 units come online per year in the future?
That's right. Yeah, we're hoping to reach over the next decade 60,000 unit per year construction pace with 192,000 units under management. And the reason we need to get to that kind of scale is we're trying to solve housing affordability nationwide. Oftentimes people ask me and they say, hey, Mike, your rents that you charge right now, they're no less than anyone else. And that's correct. That's actually intentional. And people think, dude, you're talking about affordability. The rents are the same. Like, what the heck are you doing? See, if we were to lower rents today, that would solve housing affordability for a few thousand people. That's good, but it's not nationwide. So instead, what we're doing is we're taking those profits and putting it into the system that builds housing. Elon Musk talks about how it's hard to produce a car, but it is 10 to 100 to 1,000 times harder to produce the system that builds the car. And that's what we're working on. And as we scale that up to the rate that we talked about, 60,000 units per year, now we're starting to have an impact on overall housing supply in a way that starts to bring down prices, but not just for our own residents, it's for everyone, eventually nationwide.
And I think that's going to help communities across America. And there's definitely a void regarding having updated real estate. And when somebody drives through the towns, or even in Los Angeles, I remember a decade or two ago driving through San Fernando Valley and looking and thinking, wow, some of this real estate looks like it's from the 60s or the 70s. It doesn't even, it's like America's falling behind. But let me transition for a moment, over to this idea of legacy. So
Mm.
oftentimes when somebody thinks about a family business, they can worry about how best do we prepare the heirs. So my first question for you out of curiosity is, did your family ever speak about this idea of legacy at the kitchen table or the dining room table?
Yeah, honestly, it didn't come up that much. Part of my story is that I joined the family business, and within a few years after joining, my dad passed away. It was one of the hardest moments of my life. But that point, we recognized that we didn't have really a clear plan in place. There wasn't a lot of thinking that went into legacy. It all happened much sooner than we were expecting. And maybe there's some lesson in there that none of us quite know how short life is, and that we should take the preparation we need to do today. So
Yes.
no, we didn't talk a lot about it.
Oh, and I would imagine he was probably just surviving. And it's
Yeah.
not like the subject of legacy is brought up in the school system. Sometimes it can be brought up in religious organizations like churches. But what did your parents do right when you look back in how you remember them?
You know, One of the things I think that I've come to really value is the fact that I was very involved in the work from a young age. So it gave me a deep sense of work ethic, um, maybe even a little bit extreme at times. I think my mom regrets that a little bit today because I am so driven. But to me, it's been a extremely valuable asset because it's helped us overcome challenges and get past things because we have that tenacity and drive and energy that we need to do to get by.
Very sweet. So work ethic.
Yeah.
Yeah. And his emotional strength, fortitude, determination to push through.
Yeah. Yeah. And just the fact they were just a solid rock in my life. I mean, my growing up was a very comfortable existence in the reality, I didn't have a lot of drama. Like my parents supported me as a kid. My parents stayed together growing up. All those things I think helped shape me and helped give me a stable upbringing that only made me more successful later in life.
What I think is so amazing is oftentimes with family businesses, the children have the opportunity to shadow their parents to understand firsthand how it all works together. And it sounds like because you work closely with your dad, even though originally you didn't think you were going to join the family business and chose a different major in college, you still had that opportunity, I would think, then to have shadowed him almost as an apprentice.
Yeah, yeah, I was certainly shadowing. I mean, we were building like 8 or 10 unit buildings, and I was there for much of the summer. I would actually be laying brick and block, and by the time I entered high school, I was running small teams within the company. I mean, the whole company was only a dozen or so people, but I was managing one or two of them. Um, but yeah, because of that, that helped give me that hands-on experience, that just a sense of how buildings kind of go together.
Yeah, I just think it's a wonderful aspect in terms of um, looking back. Because a lot of times, like you
Mm,
had said, life is short, and we don't sometimes like slow down to be in the moment to look at, the things they did. Parents do right.
yeah.
Yeah, and like you said, sometimes tragedy shows up and it blindsides people, and that's like those moments of decision of how do you bounce back, but then also how do you prepare for it? So now you are a parent.
Yeah. Yeah, I got two beautiful daughters. One is 3 years old, one is 5 years old, and they're so much fun. Uh, I just can't believe I get to go home to them every night. The other night I walk in and they have this drawing they drew up for me, and they're always, hey, and, Dada, we're so up to, they're so excited. I don't know, it's blissful in those moments. And it's even kind of fun because my daughter wanted to start a YouTube channel. So now her and I are creating this YouTube channel together and putting out videos. And it's just fun all around.
Yeah. I know this question isn't on the list, but what values do you get to honor by doing that?
What values do I get to what?
What values do you get to honor by creating this YouTube channel with your daughter?
Hmm. You know, it's it's connection, it's relationship, it's like a shared experience, a shared thing that we've got together. She's really loving YouTube, and I enjoyed it as well. So it's kind of I did some video work back in when I was younger, and so getting to share that experience and kind of build this together, it's just been I don't know. It's brought a new level of connection to our relationship that I didn't anticipate. So it's been fun.
That's so sweet. So thank you
Yeah.
for speaking into that, because there's definitely the business person that you are, and I think many of the other podcasts uh, revealed that. But there's
Yeah.
also other aspects of who you are as you build wealth, and one day could transfer it. So one of the next questions I have for you is: did your family have, like, let's say, a collective mission and vision statement that they might not have, but now that you are growing your wealth, is that something that you're looking into?
Yeah, so we didn't really have that growing up. I think it was a lot of like survival, get by, because part of our story is that my parents lost everything at one point. And but that has changed for us. You know, my dad died relatively young, and it reminds me how short life really is. And for me, I want to make sure I'm using my minutes well here on earth. And a big part of that what I'm using my time for is I want to make some kind of meaningful, positive impact on the world, right? On the world as a whole and also my world within my family. And so that really guides my decision making and helps our focus in solving housing affordability because I think that's something that can have that kind of meaningful impact.
Absolutely. It'll help families across America. If you could create a mission or vision statement for your family, what might it be, or what might it sound like? Or is there anyone that inspires you in this area?
You know, I think it's really at the heart about relationship, right? It's that human connection. So I think for my family on a personal basis is are we there to support each other? Do we have each other's backs? Is there a relationship? Do we feel connected to one another? And then beyond just our own personal connection is as a family unit, as a even with the wider company, like how can we as a group make a positive impact on the others that we touch within the world around us?
So maybe the motto could be, we support each other to the end.
Ooh, I like that. Nice.
Okay, good, good. Because I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'm definitely kind of pushing the envelope here a little bit.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love it.
Okay, so one of the questions that comes up, because with family businesses, they often talk about rags to riches to rags again, or shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves, or teacups to teacups, and from the stalls to the stables and back to the stalls again. There's all these different expressions in terms of the cultures around the globe. And so I realize your children are young right now, but do you have an expectation or a hope for them that they might stay within the family business in terms of, the roles they could play? Or what are your thoughts about this as you build your empire?
Mm. Yeah, I'm very conscious of that notion. Like the first generation builds it, the second generation maintains it, last generation destroys it. And I do not want that at all for our family. And even for my own, like I didn't want to join the business unless I could be 100% behind it. I can really put my passion in making that something more transformational than my dad even could touch. And that's been fun to build. But for my daughters, there's no expectation of them to join the business. I want what's right for them, right? And so if they want to do something totally different, maybe it's dance or being a scientist or a doctor or something crazy. I am 100% supportive of that. I think it's I think it becomes actually a bad situation when you put your family, your sons or daughters into leadership at a company and they're not the right person to lead it. I think that's when things start to change for the worst. And so if they want to earn it, if they want to get to that level, I'm supportive of it. But I want to also make sure we're doing right for the business because that business entity is what can help do right by the world.
That's lovely that you have made that separation. Because I know you have like 15 recruiters and you're out there finding the best of the best, so that you don't necessarily have to put that onus then onto your children
Yeah.
of right? Because
Yeah.
sometimes, right, like there could be a next gen, and let's say a parent passes away, and then all of a sudden they've got 13,000 apartment units that they have to manage, and that could either crush them, or it could be something that they are prepared for, and they can take the ball and run with it. But if they're not prepared, it could, change the dynamics of their friendships and feeling successful when they wake up in the morning.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It could, I mean, well, obviously they're young now, but if they were to take my job tomorrow, like they would be utterly crushed. I mean, they're, I wouldn't wish that on them at all. Right. So they've got to learn, grow, and improve to the point that they figure out what they want to do in life. And if that's aligned, yeah, let's have a conversation. If it's not, totally okay. I really want what's best for them. That's something I've really learned in life is that it's almost like a live and let live. I think there's some people in the world that are maybe people that are close to you that want you to behave or act in a certain way. But I don't subscribe to that. Like whatever you believe, whatever you do, like I support you. I want you to be happy in what you do. And so I hope that for other people to me and then me to my children as well.
That's lovely. That's lovely. Well, I know one of the decisions probably your dad did, right? Is you said, "Well, I don't know if I want to be a part of the family business. I'd like to study computer science." And he provided that space and freedom for you to find your own way. And if you wanted to come back and be a part of it, then you could. And so I think that's was a wise decision compared to sometimes parents can, put those, you know, expectations on their children, and it's almost like a conditional form of love, and then the child, like, they have to figure out whether it's right for them, and if they never get that choice, it almost can, cripple them in a sense.
Ah, you said something really powerful there. It's almost a conditional form of love. And if your children start to feel that way, I think that's just a disaster for anything, business, or maybe it's some other things, the sports or something you have hopes for them on. Like you should let them flourish and become who they choose to be, and guide them along the path.
Yes, I love that you're saying that, because oftentimes the love of money, and I know that you have a strong faith, but sometimes I've seen with family businesses, if there's such a pull regarding the business, it's almost like the children become second, and they feel
Mm.
that, and they can almost resent that business because it's almost like that business is like the favorite child.
Oh, yeah. That's awful. Yeah, it's that such a bad dynamic when children feel almost unloved by their parents. That's certainly nothing I want for my kids.
So, anyways, I just was highlighting that I think it's that you were lucky in the sense that your feelings initially were, well, I'm not necessarily going to walk into a joining family business because, what if other people judge me? And these are these what I
Yeah.
call the emotional blind spots of of uh, what goes with it that people oftentimes don't talk about. And then there's that loneliness that sometimes people can walk because they don't have someone that they can relate to, or they don't know everything that can come with it. We
Mm.
can look at someone and think, oh my gosh, they're so privileged and lucky, and yet, they can feel like, oh my gosh, because I have money, other people are judging me or something.
Oh yeah. Or even just the judgment of like, one of the things I really wrestled with for a long time is I don't want to join the business because I don't want people to think it was given to me. Right? And when people look at you and say, "Ah, you're only where you're at today because of your dad or what have you," um, that really weighed on me. But I think deep down, I eventually realized and recognized was that I really wanted to make a meaningful, positive impact. So why not use the platform that I have to start from to make a bigger impact in the world? And there's probably always a little part of me that wants to so outperform with what we're doing and make such a massive impact just to show the world that like it wasn't just my dad, it was a lot of transformation since.
Yeah. And I know one of the things that you shared is that this idea that, you didn't know all the answers, and that became a
Yeah.
blessing in disguise.
Yeah, so when my dad passed away, it was one of the most awful moments of my life. But if I had to pull some positive out of it looking back, it's that I didn't really know how to do things. I didn't really know the way things were supposed to be done. I did have some experience, right, growing up with it, but I think the still a level of ignorance that I had at the time was actually a bit of a blessing in disguise because we could start to question things. We could start to change things in this industry. We could start There was nobody around to tell me no. And that enabled us to do things that are different. Now, we had plenty of scars along the way. It was very, very challenging those early years, but that was the start. That was the gem of making some meaningful change.
Yeah, sometimes they call that the dark night of the soul, but when you were able to pull through, I think that is
Mm.
the triumph or the magic, because a lot of times people don't talk about failure, but failure is one of those things that it's like, okay, I learned from that, and then I learned from that, and
Yeah.
then I learned from that.
You know, what's crazy is so many people, especially as they get older, start thinking that failure is bad. And in fact, if they don't want to start something new because they're afraid of being bad at it. But the reality is, anytime we start something new, we're terrible, right? That's human nature. We're born that way. We can't walk, we can't talk, we can't add, we can't write. Why? And we're okay with it then, but why later in life are we not okay with it? But the reality is, the most successful people I've seen get really comfortable with being terrible initially, right? They get in there, they try, they fail, they learn, they try, they fail, they learn, fail some more, and eventually that's when they get to be incredible at what they do. But that failure step, that being bad at it, that is a necessary first step that people need to go through.
Yes, they get very comfortable with failure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. Sometimes people can fall into the trap of wanting to be liked, and it's hard
Yeah.
oftentimes to break away from that. And I don't know if that was something that you had to kind of walk through in terms of this idea of the distinction between being respected versus being liked. I know you're a millennial, and I don't know if you had that moment where you said, in order to be a great leader, maybe I have to forsake being popular or forsake always looking good in a society that, can value that at such a high priority.
You know, I tell my team all the time, I don't want to be fake good, right? I don't want to go around pretending to be better than I really am. I want to be honest with where I'm at because then I can work to improve and change. And we do a lot within the company to provide that transparency and honesty. But I think because I have that perspective, it helps me kind of set my ego aside and just be okay with who I am and where I'm at. And what's really powerful about that is when you do get negativity, because you're in such a place of like comfort in your own skin, you can actually meet the person where they're at in that negativity. And in many cases, can actually turn around that negativity and build that connection back up. But if you're insecure, you're afraid, or you're concerned what other people think, it's hard to have that deeper level of connection with somebody.
Well, that is definitely a skill set and a muscle.
Yeah. Oh, it is very much so.
Yeah. And if somebody doesn't trust themselves to go there, they may never build it, because it can be really terrifying if they feel fragile on the inside. Like, for instance, if they have the imposter syndrome at any level, and then they've got to go meet the naysayers. That's
Oh, and yeah, I struggled out with that a lot early on. What's interesting too, when you get into the role of a CEO, it's easy. You have a lot of power to, to hide things, right? We do big survey results, and part of the engagement survey is a review of me as a leader. Well, guess what? The first report people see when we share everything, it's how I do as a leader. But for many, it would be easier, certainly more comfortable, less painful, just to never pull out the report or kind of, dismiss the naysayers or kind of shut people down. It doesn't change the fact they're still talking about you. It just changes what you hear, which I think is among the most dangerous places to be. It's so much more powerful to know where you're at so you can work to change it.
that is deeply honest right there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe it's that blessing again that, as a millennial, you want that transparency. Like, many millennials appreciate and they value transparency. And so they seek it out. And so if you're willing to step into, being vulnerable, then it's like that just garners that much more respect. But yeah, that is a leap of faith.
And it's amazing too when you're willing to be that honest and like and vulnerable with people. It's amazing the grace people will give you. Because there's a frustration point that people have with you before you're open and honest, where they're just like mad that you do XYZ. But once you're open and honest about it and say, hey, I am doing XYZ, I want to improve it, it give you a lot of grace and freedom to work to change that.
Yeah. So before I ask you another happy question, I do have another deeper question.
Yeah.
So, given that you've dealt with the passing of a parent too soon, and somebody can
Mm.
start designing their legacy at any age, the sooner the better. Is there a plan for your children, just in case you pass on too soon? Like, what is it that you would want them to remember you by? Like, if you had an imaginary hardcover coffee table book, what would be in it?
Mm. I think for me, the thing I'd want them to remember, at least me by, is that I fought to make a meaningful impact on the world, right? That I understood what my dream was, what my passion was, which was to change the world in some positive way, and then I took the actions, engaged with life in a way that supported that long-term vision and dream. I think that's from more of a business side, and from just a personal side, um, for them to know how much I love them, right? My dad died young, and I didn't get the opportunity to spend that time and connection with them. And if I died young, I'd hope they understood how much I love and care for them.
Thank you. I know that's a tender moment. And I also
Yeah.
know that you've chosen to go home, I think it's at 5 or 6 p.m. every day through the accountability of your coaches so that you don't miss those moments and you delegate the challenges to your great team. So, in case there's a surprise that comes up, they can handle it and then you can be there at 5 or 6 o'clock.
Yeah, for me, every night it's 6 o'clock, but I'm home at 6 o'clock so I can be with the kids there for dinner, for playtime and bedtime. And then after that, I can go back to work. But it's important to me that I am engaged with them during that time every single night so they have that connection with me.
And they know that they are important.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
I think it was Oprah Winfrey or Maya Angelou, something, one of those two. It said something along the lines of children notice when you walk into the room and if your eyes light up.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. Yeah, it's so true. The day at work may have been terrible, but every time when if I have to sit in the car a little bit and cool off, that's okay. But the moment I open the door to walk into the house, like it's, hey, Claire Bear, like, how was your day? Like, just bring the energy and the connection and passion, and they bring it back, right? And it totally changes your mood. It's amazing.
That's so cool. Thank you again for speaking into the other parts of your life because again, you are more than your net worth, you're more than your money, and I think it's
Yeah.
important to share a little bit of that. So, in addition to your business goals where you get to merge technology, finance and real estate together as an apartment property developer, are there any other ways you would like to serve the next generation?
Yeah, so it's ultimately about housing affordability for me. But beyond that, um, there are a lot of interesting kind of things that we can do to support the community. One of my favorite ones is inspiring our teams, empowering our teams to make meaningful impact in the wider community. In our company, it's our team members who inspire new ideas. And so one thing that happened not too long ago was one of our staff members said, "Hey, there's this elderly man, his house is falling apart. In fact, his lawn is so awful that it's overrun with not just weeds, but full out trees." He hadn't mowed his lawn in like 60 years. And then we brought out anyone who wanted to, which was about half the company. It was over 100 people showed up and repaired this guy's home on a Saturday. Right? It's having that kind of impact on the lives of the people around us. It's, supporting our local fire and police throughout, again, staffers inspired us, and we went out and did it to support the local community. Even things like the earthquakes in Turkey, when that happened, our staff member said, "Dude, we should do something about this." And so we raised money from our company, for myself, but also from other employees to actually support the people who are out there. And so I hope our organization always has that heart and support for the community around us.
That's so cool. I didn't even see that answer coming.
Yeah.
Well, you're definitely mature beyond your years, but again, I think
Mm.
life has asked you to step up to the plate, and you've definitely gone through the fire and fire. Is it trial by fire?
Yeah.
And prevailed. Okay, so how would you like to handle the legacy conversation one day with your children, even if your estate plan might not be that dining room or kitchen table conversation?
It's such a good question. I think for me, the most important thing is, what do they want out of life, and how do I support them in their dream? right? And so that actually may have nothing to do with the business. I've even had thoughts about like, if they're not interested in the business, maybe what we do is we set some money aside for them, but then we somehow take the assets of the business and provide it back to society in some meaningful way. Um, I want to make sure we're doing things right for our children and we're doing things right for society as a whole. Because guess what? When you hit the grave, what are you going to do with all that money? They're going to shove $100 bills in your grave? Like, it's pointless. Like, how do I actually, again, how do I have that meaningful impact on society? And that's really what guides me.
That's beautiful. That's lovely. And it's very honest, because I think some people these days, if they could live longer, whether it's through stem cell research or other technology, I think a part of that is because their life is so good. But I think another part of it that people don't talk about enough is that maybe they have life regrets. And if they could just get some
Mm,
more, buy some more time, right?
yeah. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Yeah.
Well, what I'm loving that I get to hear right now is your integrity. And so that's why you're
Mm,
such at a, like in a place of peace to know you're doing the right thing, and then being able to show that to your family as well as to your team at work. And I think as you grow, because you've built the foundation correctly, you're going to continue to be, I think what they call it is the servant leader, which is a compliment.
mm. I
Yeah.
appreciate that. Yeah. I've really realized that in life, the best way to live is to be true to yourself, right? So know what you're passionate about, but then just be honest with that, wherever you're at, so that people understand that your words then will line up well with your actions. And for me, I feel a deep sense of like pain or I don't know, regret or something if I'm ever even a little bit outside of like saying something that's not in line with who I am. But when you get all that in alignment, it's just magical because the people that don't like it, well, they're not your people. They're going to go somewhere else. But the ones who do appreciate what you're saying can then see that what you're saying lines up with your words. And there's just a deeper relationship that you have with the people around you.
Yeah. Thank you. I know some of these questions are deeper than some of the other
Yeah.
podcast guests. So
It's awesome. I love them.
good, good, good. So my next question has to do with, like, if I see, let's say there was a couple, Chip and Joanna Gaines, they have Magnolia out of Texas. And one of the things is, as their success grew, and I don't even realize, I don't even think that they realized how successful they were going to become. They had the television show, which then parlayed into the magazine, and then them creating the Silos, which is that commercial real estate development in
Oh,
downtown,
wow.
right, downtown Waco, Texas.
Okay.
And so they've done commercial real estate projects and so forth. But the reason I bring this up is I've seen clips from when their children would be at the Silos, and their children sometimes, I guess that brings my question regarding, do you have any concerns in what your children could encounter and walk into one day?
I'm not familiar with the clips, but I do think a lot about that. Like, for me, when I was growing up, I had to be in the business because my parents couldn't afford childcare, right? And they could use the additional free labor. But now that I'm older and we're in a different state financially, my kids don't have to be involved in that business, and they really, I mean, they're too young now, but they really aren't. And I worry a little bit because they aren't, are they losing something, right? Are they losing that lesson of hard work or energy or effort? I don't know if I have a good answer to it yet, but I do think about that.
Yeah. Well, I know again that they're young, but obviously some of the things that can come with wealth that often isn't talked about is like, okay, well, if your child has a big red fire truck, but then their friend doesn't.
Mm. Yeah, we live in a neighborhood, I think, where all their friends have a similar level of stuff and wealth. So they don't really necessarily see that yet. Um, they probably see it a little bit in the fact we're on Wall Street Journal and the NPR and CBS and stuff like that,
Dad
where
is
it's
a
a little bit
star.
different. Yeah, yeah, well, yeah. They were watching me on the news the other night, and I don't think their friends have that same kind of experience. But I don't think they're at a stage yet that I don't think they really understand that yet.
It's so interesting because it's like, well, I don't know again how old your children are. You said they're 2 and 5,
3 and 5.
3 and 5. So it's like right after cartoons.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, well, I'm glad that everyone can laugh about that because, yeah, I think you have to have a little bit of a sense of humor because on one hand, it's like everything's so big, and then yet you can still go home and break bread with your family, and it's just normal, and you're just normal people.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy. We just shot a video yesterday at one of our buildings. It's $100 million building, and it's incredible. It's so massive. And it's just an incredible experience to be able to go through this facility. And then you just come home and it's like, oh, time for bed, right? It literally feels like a normal life, other than these extraordinary experiences you face on an
Yeah,
everyday
it's like
basis.
walking through worlds.
Yeah, yeah, it really is.
Yeah. Do you anticipate, as a part of designing your legacy, covering any topics with your children around power dynamics? And again, I realize that they're young, but I just want to say again, when somebody designs their legacy, they don't have to be 70 years old or 60 years old. It's something that they can choose early to think about these conversations so they don't get blindsided later.
Do you mean like power dynamics if they took over the business?
Sure, sure. Just what they might face in dealing with other people. I know that one of the things that you're very good at is realizing that human nature is human nature, and
Mm.
so whether it's having like a great severance package in case an employee leaves, or knowing to always have that transparency. I just wonder, because if they see like, wow, dad just walked the floor of 100 unit building or something, then it's like, well, dad, I'd like a Corvette, or dad, I feel entitled to the sailboat, or something.
Yeah. So within power dynamics within the business, like I think there's a lot of lessons there that if they wanted to run the business, they would have to learn, right? And so there'd be a lot of conversations about that. They can't, I mean, there's so much content that we create ourselves that they could literally just watch some of the content we've created to understand it as well. And yeah, there's the aspect of almost being spoiled too, right? Like, oh, yeah, I can just afford a Corvette or what have you. Like, just get that for me. Um, I really hope to do a good job of not having that be their reality. Um, yeah, I want them to earn. There's a joy in earning it, right? And there's a lesson there in the hard work, the value of a dollar that I really hope to instill in them. So I have no intention of just granting them large gifts like that in the future.
So, do you plan to invite them into work? Because I know, like you had said,
Mm.
like so many moments ago, that your parents didn't necessarily have the funds for childcare. Therefore, you helped out at the business, and so it was both like a win-win. But at the same time, I wonder if you will, how you would choose to navigate that conversation. I think you've said that you will give the choice to them, and at the same time, because you had no other choice, you had to grow.
Yeah, yeah. I guess for me, the way I'm thinking about it is that I'm going to give them the choice. Um, but there's a part of me that's concerned. Like to me, almost not having the choice was a benefit. So I gotta find that right balance, and I don't know if I would get an answer to that yet. Um, but we'll be faced with it in the coming years. They're still a little young yet. Right now when they come to work, it's like a playpen for them.
Yeah, yeah, for their play years, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah,
I wanted just to point the flashlight to this idea that sometimes life is hard.
yeah. Oh my gosh, yeah, yeah. And you need that in your life to help grow you.
Well, it's humbling, and then if you know that, then it's like it can't be a shocker later on down the road of, gosh, I thought it was going to be easy, and then when that
Oh my, yeah, absolutely. Even as we're doing the YouTube stuff, it's a small channel right now, but it's been growing quite rapidly. It's a brand new channel just a few weeks ago, and we've got tens of thousands of views. And she looks at it and she has no knowledge of how hard that really is to do. That it just doesn't come like that. And I don't know. I got to figure out a way so that she understands like how much goes on behind the scenes to make that actually happen. And I don't have a great answer to that yet.
yeah. So I know that one of the things is that many times tragedy can destabilize a legacy, and
Mm.
I wanted to bring this idea up because your story is a happy story and you had prevailed. But I was curious, in terms of the good decisions you made, what was the catalyst to help overcome and master those challenges? Like, what did you do well during that process to help you go from that point in time to where you are today? because again, we oftentimes don't see like those moments in the locker room or the moments of like,
Yeah.
right, when you're like sweating it and it's like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do, and being like in a panic or having that anxiety. We just see like, oh, here's Mike and he's on the cover of the magazine and the star, and then but all of that, like the 10 chapters of the hardship get left out.
Yeah, no, that's great. And the reality of the story is, yes, it had a happy ending, but it almost didn't. After my dad passed away, the project we were working on at the time was called Emberwood, and the city looked at me and said, "Mike, you're just a pipsqueak kid." I was really young. You have no idea what you're doing, right? And they actually shut me down twice. And the second time they shut me down, they said, "Dude, Mike, you're not good enough. You need to hire a new manager." And so here I had a crew, it was about a dozen people, but I had a crew that would lose their jobs unless I could find a new manager in a matter of just a couple of days. It was actually over Thanksgiving weekend. We called everyone I knew, and I was able to find someone, but that's the worst way to hire. That's another story that didn't work out that well. But then behind the scenes here, I'm trying to do all this work because I got this manager that's kind of on the surface of things and trying to keep the city off of our back. And then within a few months of opening, we had a water main that thousands of feet long, 15 feet in the ground. Our tests showed that there was a pinhole leak somewhere in that water main, but we had no knowledge where. And so it was weeks and I was out there from dawn till dusk in my nice clothes, like shoveling dirt, looking for this leak with the excavators. It was awful. I remember it was so bad. One night I came home and my brother wanted to celebrate his birthday. And I just couldn't. There was nothing left of me. I went showered and went right to bed. And I felt so bad about that. That was how intense it was in that moment. And I remember just a few days before we were supposed to open, we had a city official come out and he looked at the project and said, "There's no way. You're not opening this building. There's no way you're going to do it." And we worked through the night, multiple nights. And then the final day, we had this big inspection. It was a half a dozen inspectors, including for half a day. They looked at every nook and cranny of the building. And we got down to the parking garage at the end. And the head building official pulled me aside and said, "Mike, I know we were hard on you, but honestly, looking at it now, this is the nicest building we've ever built in the city." It was like, finally, right? And it was this moment of like validation because this whole time I'm questioning, am I good enough? Like, can I actually do this? Or am I just a wannabe, right?
And they're testing
And
you.
yeah. And I think really the skill set that got me through that was just a willingness to put the next foot in front of in front of the other, despite all of the setbacks, despite all the pain. It was horrible. Um, but I'm thankful for that experience now because it's made me a better person.
Yeah, I love that story because it's so realistic. And those moments when you are challenged in your mettle and your
Mm,
skill and your identity, and it's and how do you come back? And like you said, you had already felt like almost like this nervousness of like, am I good enough? And then the
yeah.
water main.
Yeah.
I'm sure you felt like Job in that moment.
Oh, absolutely.
How much more? So I know that you're in the process of raising capital and you're inviting the public to be a part of the funding of future projects. Would you like to chat about this as we close out the conversation?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're launching a new investment platform. As we look at the world of real estate investment, so much real estate investment is the average person can invest in, right? Because you need to be an accredited investor. You need to have $1 million in assets, excluding your home, or a $200,000 income. And so we wanted to look at this space differently too. And so we've gone the more arduous process of getting through a Reg A approval with the SEC, which is quite intense now that we've been through it. But this allows any investor to come in and actually invest in what we're doing. And we're creating a little bit what feels like a bank. It's not actually a bank. Let me be really clear. It's not FDIC insured, but we take steps to protect your money. And you have an online account you can put money into and earn rates of return that are quite high, because we're not only giving you your interest rate the bank would have given you, we're also giving you the bank's profits, basically allowing you to become the bank in this transaction. And so we're really excited about that. And that is launching very shortly.
That's very cool. And I love how, again, you have embraced innovation and
Mm.
the courage to grow beyond the comfort zone and trying new things to make sure it works in today's marketplace. And also just knowing that you have to think outside of the box, because as interest rates go up or whatever it is that the banking community is going to decide to do in the coming months and years, it's that willingness to think from a creative standpoint, so that, whether you're doing crowdfunding or raising capital, it's, again, your train doesn't stop just because one of the pieces moves on the chessboard.
Exactly. Yeah.
So before I read out my closing paragraph, will you tell us one more time what you would like your legacy to be?
I want my legacy to be one of making a meaningful, positive impact on the world. And the way I think I can do that is by working to solve housing affordability.
It's lovely. Okay. Well, I'm just going to read my closing paragraph real quick. Okay. So in closing, I'm Angelina Carleton, the hostess of the Design Your Legacy podcast, as well as the founder of Legacy Planning, a boutique advisory firm based out of Beverly Hills, California, but international in those I coach. I hope to dive deep into subjects that can help a person define, develop, and execute their legacy, and continue to scour the landscape for those who can be great resources to every dimension of your legacy. For many listeners, there can never be enough education and preparation in the moat around your castle. Whether you find yourself with new wealth or generational wealth, may the content on this channel be an anchor in any storms ahead. We do our best to provide original content for your intellectual and emotional curiosity. Thank you for joining us today. And thank you so much to Mike, the Chief Executive Officer of Norhart, for speaking into his legacy.
Thanks for having me.